do. Thank you so much.
Is it 320?
It is, yeah, that's our class number.
I just
Some good meditation.
Functions will open on 10.5.
Yeah, I gotta fix this up. So let me open it right now so we can all look at it.
Awesome.
So yeah, open date. What is today? It's the week before the 5th, so it's the 28th. Done. And then I would like this to close next week at let's shoot for Tuesday, because Monday is going to be a kind of a work day in here, just to clear up any problems, because I think we're going to have some problems, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about. And I don't mean that in any bad way. I mean that's good, because you want to be learning, right? So there's 10 problems in that assignment, and homework sets. So go to functions. So let's just talk about web work for a second. So first off, is anybody having trouble logging in?
Wait. I think that you changed it to 11:59 p.m. today.
So shit.
Open's midnight,
So that's
That's
not
not better.
correct.
So it's closer. They're definitely getting closer.
Yeah. Let me
Yvonne's
fix
like-
that again.
Yvonne's like sitting in his room, like, gotta wait until 11:59, man.
Yeah, Yvonne's a righteous dude. He would do that.
He does do that.
I did that, yeah.
Yvonne and I were like at the club, and he's like, "Hold on, I gotta rip out this math homework real quick."
He's got to what? Rip out some math?
Yeah.
Nice.
It's like, hold on, I gotta prove some equations.
Yeah, that's usually what I've found is that when I tell people, well, first off, I hate parties. Not my thing. But when you do tell people, oh, I'm a mathematician, that kills every bit of conversation that could ever possibly happen. So, who has logged in? Tell me, just I need. Okay, good. Yeah, awesome.
All right.
Kyle.
Yeah.
Awesome, cool. Okay, great. So let me just show you, for example. So these are cool because they everybody gets a unique problem. So they tweak the numbers on here. I'm going to show you how to do this problem today. I'm going to show you how to do all the problems in here today, hopefully. But this is going to be one of your assignments. So there's some tricks to this, like how do you enter things, and it can be challenging at times. See how here it says interval notation? So your answers for a question like that are going to be, for example, and this isn't right, but if I wanted to say negative infinity, I would put negative inf, comma, so notice there's a left bracket, or left parenthesis, 2, and then I'm going to skip over the 2, so I union with 2, comma, inf, and then I close that off. Then I can check my answers. So what is nice here? You don't have this button that says correct answers. that's for me only. But you can first off preview your answers, which shows you what you've entered. You might want to use this a lot if things are going weird. So that tells me, it's like a sanity check. Did I enter what I think I entered? And then you can check your answers. And so that is wrong, and the other one's wrong because there's no answer in it. But if this one was right, it would turn green and say A-OK. So I know some of you have a lot of experience with web work in here. Who else has actually used web work? And Joey, definitely Yvonne. And, oh, wonderful. No, so about half and half haven't. So what I'm going to ask you is to please make this kind of your priority for Monday. Try to get started on this assignment, because if you've never used web work, it may be a little confusing, but it's actually really intuitive. So that is what I wanted to say about that. That's part of your homework. And you might even be able to do some of it now, so that's great. Let's talk about some other things that you've got on your plate. And let's write this all down. So you've got a web work. There's 10 problems. You've also got a connect assignment. this is like completely different types of problems. They're a little more abstract and conceptual. These are really computational problems. There's always a conceptual aspect to math. These are due next Tuesday. And then, what's due Friday? What's due this Friday?
Corrections.
That's right. So Friday, and if you have them, I'll collect them today too. But Friday by 12:30, I need your corrections. And if you're redoing that proof, the proof submission, proof resubmission. Everybody cool in that? So yes, Cadence.
Is the Connect open yet?
The Connect is not open yet, I believe. I think it opens at 1:15 or something like that. So yeah, and that'll be a good thing. Let me know if that thing doesn't open. I will say this again for like the third time. I am really particular that you following the instructions that I've laid out for these. So please, 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 please do me a favor and just give me what I ask for. I'll treat you so nicely. It makes me so happy, and you want the person who's giving you a grade to be like, this person cares about what I say. And even if you don't listen to that, you might still care, but right? We show love with our actions, right? How many times you had someone tell you they love you and they're a lying sack of shit? Yeah, me too. Exactly. And so for me, you don't have to love me, but I hope you just respect me and just follow those instructions. Where do you turn them in at? Where do you think that answer to that is? In my mailbox. So my office. So this is due by 12:30 in my office. You can turn it in earlier. So there's a box outside my office in 108F Carroll Hall, right above ITS, right next to the physics department, intermingled with the physics department in the suite that we share. Not knowing where my office is does not excuse you from this deadline. So if you start like at 12:29, I'm gonna go turn this in. Where's he live? I don't know.
Where's he live?
That would be sucky for you, because I won't accept stuff after 12:30.
At least you're telling us the right hall.
I am.
Yesterday, someone told me, oh, my office is in Clark Hall, and it was in Carroll Hall. And I went in Clark Hall for like 30 minutes and waited for their office, and people were like, why are you here? And I was like, I'm looking for someone's office.
Well, it's time to file a lawsuit.
Yeah, lawsuit.
Yeah. Breach of contract, absolutely.
Fired, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
Get him out.
Get him fired for that.
Someone
That
needs
is,
a law.
in our modern world, there is no forgiveness. There is no route to come back from anything. So let's see here. All right. Is everybody cool about what we need to get done? Yeah?
Sir.
Any questions at all? If you have any questions, email me. Yeah. Cool. And I'll be in my office at 12:30 waiting for your beautiful things. And maybe I'll walk in and they'll be there and I'll be so happy. And I've got Yvonne's already. Yeah.
I just have one question.
Yes, sir.
For the corrections and the proof, do you want it to just go, like, should I just do it all on a separate piece of paper and turn it all in as one? Like, or do you want me to just?
Separate piece for this, separate piece for this.
So yeah, just two new pieces
Yes,
of
sir.
paper. Cool.
Yes, and that's clearly laid out in those instructions. So I would suggest just
I was
refreshing,
just assuming.
because you've had my corrections before, and you know I get real uptight.
Well, it's confusing because some teachers want it on the original, like, printed out one, and they just want it in a different color. So, I don't know, I just got used to doing that for some reason.
You're gonna find that different people are different.
I know. And I like this way better, I'm not gonna lie.
I haven't had corrections for a single other person here, so I'm real glad we got some corrections. Thank you.
You're welcome. Great, wonderful. And let's get rolling then with the stuff that should help us get that web work knocked out and that connect. We are talking about functions today. And probably Monday as well, because you're gonna come in with some questions and we're gonna work you through all the difficulties. Abraham, you might have missed the very intro about the new homework system, so
I got
Vincent's
one.
got you. Awesome, fantastic. All right, functions. I've got a couple of sets. So I've got sets A, and I've got another set B. I want to express some kind of relationship between these two sets. So let's say we've got an A, B, and a C in this set, and then over here, I've got X, Y, Z, and a W. Let's add a D here as well. So a function is just a correspondence between these two sets. So a function is a correspondence between two sets. And it's a very specific kind. A very specific one. And that's what some of these questions in the Connect particularly are going to be about. You can think of it this way. It's a rule for associating elements of an input set. And I like to think of this, and you won't find this language in a lot of places, so I'm using my own language because I think it's really suggestive of an input set to those of an output set. Now, the functions I'm going to draw right now are, you're used to this. Probably if you think function, you think of this, f of x. This is what you always learned. And maybe you even have seen the more rudimentary and primal versions I'm going to show you here. But here's a function. If I input b, I output y. So I just draw this little arrow. So this is my input. See that, and the arrow is actually suggesting a direction. Input, and then this is my output. And you're computer people, so input and output are like you don't do shit in computers without input and output. Everything is that. And then maybe I take this A and I also send that to that Y. Look at that. They can have the same output. Two inputs can have the same output. I take this C and I map that to W. So let me just say the word, I just said a phrase that might be a little bit unfamiliar here, but first off, let's label this F. So this is the name of the function. So now when I talk about function F, I mean this picture. That's all I mean. And this function F maps, so this is some language here, A to Y, and it maps B to Y, and then it maps C to W. So these are all three different sentences here. I'm just using that language, it's mapping these things. Notice that not everything gets hit, and not everything's an input. So not all these things over here are actually outputs that I can see manifested, and not all these inputs are used. So this set here is called the codomain of F. And what that means is it's equal to all potential inputs. Oh, sorry, excuse me, sorry. That's domain. I meant domain, sorry. This is, so the domain is all potential inputs. The codomain is all potential outputs. These are great words, and they're words that folks don't learn a lot, or often, before they get into university, generally. All potential outputs. The range of the function are the outputs I actually hit. So the range of F is equal to the outputs we can actually hit with some input. basic definitions. So let me show you some nice ways to write this. So that's a picture that really expresses everything we need, but maybe you don't want to draw a picture. So we can write, using some notation, that what's happening up there in the following way. First off, I write this kind of general statement. And then let me show you how to read this. You okay, Joey?
Yeah.
Yeah, you look like you're having a really good time. So this is a really general statement. This is the function name. And this, I read this colon as maps. And then the set A, and I read this arrow as to B. So I read this whole sentence as F maps A to B. And these are sets. These are always sets. So this first thing, this is going to be my domain, this A. And B is the codomain. So A equals the domain. And that's all valid inputs. Again, I'll say that. And B is the codomain. All possible outputs. So I'm saying things multiple times, but I've learned that that's a good way to say math. Multiple ways and multiple times, all possible outputs. If you think in terms of inputs and outputs, you're going to be doing way better, like in conceptually. It'll just make this all go down so much easier.
So you say like F is in the middle of that, and that's what maps is because it's keeping track of where it goes from one set to the other.
Perfect. So, yeah, it's just a rule. So you can think of it as a rule as also. That's another good word for it. Yeah. Conversion from one input, from the input to the output. So, I don't want to get too weird. I was thinking about, although I think getting weird is kind of my shtick, but I was thinking about like a microphone. So you've got like a mic. How do you spell mic? Like that?
Yeah.
Like a microphone. So you've got like a mic, and that's your input. The signals coming in are your input. So like your voice goes into the mic, and then it transforms it. You've got this whole system, maybe an amplifier or something like that, maybe like an equalizer, all sorts of things. So you're taking that input signal and you're tweaking it, doing all sorts of stuff to it, and what comes out is your final sound, right? So here, my domain is all sounds, and my output is also all sounds. All the possible things that can happen. You are a function. You are a function. Everything's like a function in some ways. Anything that can have an input and output can be viewed as a function. But there's one thing a function can't do. So the only thing we ask of a function is that it doesn't take some input and spit out two different outputs. That would be pretty weird, and it would be kind of hard to keep track of it. Now there's a thing called a multifunction. We're not doing that. Is that each input has only one output. So here's what's not a function. Let's draw a picture here. Here's A, here's some stuff in here, here's B, and here's some stuff over here, put a bunch of dots. This is not a function. So this is bad. Bad, I don't mean to be judgmental. I shouldn't call it bad. You know, it's just not a function.
It doesn't even make logical sense though, right? Isn't it bad? I'd call it bad.
Well, agreed.
A can't equal B and C.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
unless
true.
B or C are the same, but
So sometimes we might want this, Joey. So for example,
okay.
I might express some rule that goes like this: plus or minus, maybe like the square root of x.
So you get a negative or a positive.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So this thing, for example, if I give it the input 4, then it spits out a +2 and a -2, and that's not function stuff. Not function. Start speaking like a caveman. Not a function. One output. That's it. And that'll become important to us. Okay, so we've got all our kind of good stuff here. What's this? Here, you tell me, since you're the computer people. You actually deal with functions all the time if you're doing any serious coding besides hello world, right? It's got some one-line thing that says print something.
So I know.
You might even have a function for that, I don't know. But what is this?
Function to write programs for you.
There's some down here. What is that? What language is that? Could it be? Probably a couple languages.
Floor, float, real. Probably Java.
Yeah, it is Java. Yeah. So in Java, I would write something like this. This is my code domain. It tells me what's going to come out of that function. So I expect an integer out. What's this?
This is a floating real.
Yeah, in terms of the stuff we were just talking about.
Like points.
It's domain.
Yeah.
That is the domain, all the possible inputs. So this is my domain. And then the rule is coded in here. Like, what am I going to do for each real, this is essentially just real numbers. And then I spit out an integer from this. So maybe this thing, all this does is round. Maybe this function just rounds up or rounds down. We're actually going to talk about that function. That's going to be one of our important examples, and it's in our homework. So let's see, what else do I want to show you? Oh, let's get some, so that's an example of a function that we would need to be a coding class to be messing with. Let's look at some other ones that you're probably a little more comfortable with. So sometimes you just get a rule. And let's, oh shit, let's toss some extra letters in. I got this function g to get spicy. And this function g is expressed by this formula. So now let's get, this is gonna get a little tricky. You seem like you're going into convulsions, Joe. Are you okay? All right.
Just like
yeah.
cramping
Okay.
a
All
little
right. Just writhing.
My thighs are just cramping.
Oh God. See, you are. You are
Yeah.
going into like convulsions.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I need sustenance, man.
You need more methylation. So when you come off the
Method,
methylation, you
yes.
start convulsing.
Pop-Tart.
So, what do you think what are the possible inputs here? What numbers can I square? Is there any number I can't square? Like some numbers I can't divide by, right? So I can't divide by 0. But I'm not dividing here, I'm just squaring things. Is there any number you can think of that I can't just multiply by itself because of the laws of math?
Zero.
Was that?
Well, 0.
Is 0 squared?
Well, I mean, it'd be 0, so you can, I guess. But
You can. That's okay though, right? It's
like,
itself.
It doesn't really do anything.
I can also square 1,
Yeah.
and it's itself. But I can do it. So here the domain is all real numbers. I'm going to give you some contrasts here for a bit. What things can this spit out? So first off, let's say the codomain is real numbers. You take a real number, you square it, you get a real number. So I actually could write this. G takes inputs from the reals. Have we done this symbol, right? Yeah. Takes inputs from the reals and maps out things into the reals. Is this the range of the function? Can I hit all possible real numbers? Can I hit -4? No. What can I hit? So the range here, what's the least number I could hit?
0.
0, beautiful, and I can actually hit 0, and then I can hit everything on up. And how do I know that? So you might be like, how are people even knowing this? Because I could make the graph of this function, right? So if I actually graphed out y equals x squared, this is my output, x is my input, and I can see a picture of how the input to output relate. Here's y, and here's x. Notice that I don't hit any of this. Can't hit this. Down there. The only things I can hit are the things up above. So the range is just this set right here. So this is gonna be one of the things that's a little bit tricky on the Connect homework. You've got some of this to do. What I would recommend is getting a graph out. And here's the graphing program I recommend. We haven't really done any graphing, but I would go to desmos.com, use their graphing calculator. It's superb. The best free graphing calculator available, maybe even among paid ones. I freaking love it. How about this? Let's take a look at another. Let's say h of x is 1 over x. Now I gave you some tips here. So first off, what's the domain? And sometimes it's easier to talk about what's not in the domain. So are there any x values that would be bad to use?
0.
0, yeah. And everything else okay, right? The only thing I can't divide by is 0. So here I'm going to say all reals except 0. Now let me show you some notation because you're going to need this for web work. We want to use interval notation. So I start at negative infinity. So think about the real number line. Here's the real number line. Negative infinity's out here, positive infinity's out here. And I just want to remove 0. So I start at negative infinity and I keep on cruising to the right and I want to stop just to the left of 0. So I use this open parenthesis. And then I'm going to use a union symbol to say, you can think of that as like a jump rope skip, right? I'm going to skip over the thing that's next. But really what I'm saying is the domain is all x that are in this, or, because this is just an or, this is union, but we know that union just means or. Pick it up on the right side, and go to infinity. So that's my domain. What about my range? Let's see, so first off, let's call this D here, so I don't have to write it again. So H maps from D into the reals. Your codomain is probably always gonna, if you put R, it's probably gonna be A-okay. Because we're not gonna spit out anything, we're not gonna spit out complex numbers in this class, we're just not doing it. So the outputs are real numbers, that's all that says. But what is the range? And let's talk about that. What is the range of H? And to do that, I would go to Desmos, I'd get myself a graph. And the graph is gonna look like this. Here's Y, here's X, these are output, and these are input. And the graph is going to be what's called a hyperbola, and these are asymptotic, these are acting asymptotically, like so. And this just gets closer and closer and closer here. So here's how you can figure out the range. Take a horizontal line. Imagine you've got like, I don't know why I just thought a bamboo stick, but that's what I thought of. I think it's because I have one at home on my table for some reason. So take a horizontal line and sweep it from top to bottom. If it intersects the graph, if it touches the graph, that's a possible output. So like right here, I say, can I output this value right here? And sure enough, I can, because here's the input that gets it. Right? You put that in, you get that output. Where am I having troubles? 0. At 0. There's nothing at 0. These are asymptotic. They're getting closer to that horizontal axis, but they're not touching it. So right here, this axis isn't used. So the range of H actually looks exactly like the domain of H. It's all real numbers from negative infinity up to 0, but we skip over 0 and then pick it up on the other side. So the range of H looks like this as well. Skip, like so. So this is one of the trickier parts of the homework, for sure. Let's go back to that very first web work problem and talk about it. So the very first problem, when I pulled it up, it was something like this. It was some function k, and it was the square root of 64 minus x squared, or something like that. So the problem here was, what's the domain? What's the range? So find domain and range. If I plotted this out, the picture would look something like this. So I go to Desmos and I get a plot, and it's gonna look like this. It's actually the upper half of a circle. It's just half of a circle. And this would be 8 as well up here. These points I actually can get to. What do you think the domain is? 0 to 8 definitely is
Or
part.
negative.
Indeed. So everything from -8 up to +8, yeah, exactly. What is the range? What's the lowest? So let's sweep up. Not touching, right? What's the first y value I can output? 0. And what's the last one I can output? 8. Yeah, so your first answer was that it actually worked great for the range. Who said 8? That was great. Solid. So that's my range. Let me show you another way to do this. Oh shit, maybe not. Let's just have this be our way. Because I feel like I'm about to start teaching pre-calc, and I don't really want to do that. But there's nothing wrong with this. It might take a little bit of deeper thought. Let me show you, oh shit, I'm gonna show you. So, when you take the square root of something, what has to be true about the thing you're taking the square root of? Like, can I do this?
No.
Not with real numbers, right? So this thing underneath here has to be greater than or equal to 0. So must be. Can't take square root of a negative. So this thing underneath here has to be greater than or equal to 0. And now you gotta solve this inequality. And so I'm just gonna, boy, this is pretty bad. But solve the inequality to get the domain. And maybe we'll talk about that on Monday if we need to, but God, I don't want to go there now. Everything going okay over there? Oh no, you're good, Alex. Yeah. Vincent, everything cool?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Alrighty, so that's a lot of that. Let's talk about some other subtleties of functions. So let's take a look back at this function, f of x equals x squared. This is a happy function. It's just a parabola. I'm going to sketch it back out, because having a graph of a function is halfway to understanding it completely. And so this y, this is actually just the f of x up here too. This is my output, and this is my input. Notice that each output, like let's say 4 here, how many different inputs hit that same output? So what I'm talking about is, if we were to read this backwards, got that and that, what are those two numbers there?
2, right?
2 and?
-2.
And -2. So check this out. We can say to ourselves, what is the, and here's a new lingo, pre-image of 4 under this function f? Now, what does that mean? That is just equal to the set of all inputs. So it's a set, it's coming out. Inputs that give output 4. So I would write it like this. The pre-image of that is just -2 and 2. This function is not 1 to 1. This function is 2 to 1. So this function is 2 to 1, i.e. each output comes from 2 inputs, except one number. What would that be? There's like one place that there's only one output for the input. That's it, yeah, I saw you mouthing that. Yeah, Sophia, absolutely. Yes, so 0. But we'll just say, overall, this function is 2 to 1, i.e. it is not 1 to 1. So what does 1 to 1 mean? This is going to be in the homework. A function is 1 to 1, so f is 1 to 1 if each output has only one input, has precisely one input. Or has, maybe I should say comes from, that's a little better, it's a little more suggestive. Does anybody remember what test you use to determine if a function's 1 to 1?
The vertical line test.
The vertical line test, yeah, absolutely. So the horizontal line test, oh wait, no,
Backwards.
yeah, horizontal line test, yes, exactly. So the horizontal line test, you just take your graph and you get a horizontal line and you ask yourself, does it ever touch the function in more than one spot? And if it does, you're not 1 to 1. So let's actually talk about that and just write that up. So, how to determine if a function is 1 to 1. So here's an algorithm. This is 1 to 1. It looks like an H who just got broken somehow, but I mean 1 to 1 there. Graph it. Thanks, Desmos. 2, sweep a horizontal line, and this is in your mind, from bottom to top. If it ever touches the graph in more than one spot, well, how about this? If it only touches the graph, only ever touches one point on the graph, the function is 1 to 1. Let's check out a few other things here. Let's do a couple examples. So this pen is starting to croak. Get this here. So is this function, I'll just give you a graph, nice little picture. And this is probably f of x equals x cubed minus x. I think something like that would work. We'll make this 1, and that's minus 1. And that's 0. So I give you this function. You go to Desmos, and you graph it. Is that function 1 to 1? No, Yvonne's giving me a nice solid answer. Answer it for yourself. Is that function 1 to 1? Yeah, so right here it is, right? So check it out. So like I gotta make sure I do the whole sweep with my mind. Right there, it's only touching in one spot. One spot. One spot. Oh shit, look at that. It's 2 to 1 right there. What is it here? How many to 1? This is 3 to 1. And then what's this here? 2 to 1. And then I'm back to 1 to 1 again. But to say the whole function is 1 to 1 means it only can ever hit one point. So it's got to be just one point no matter how you're going, even though it's changing in the middle. This is not 1 to 1. And I use the horizontal line test. Cool. Let's do one last thing. And then we'll get into some, the like kind of the what I consider the fun part, kind of like all this stuff. But we have one last definition. A function f that goes from a to b, and I don't know what those are, is onto. Does anybody know what that one means?
I've read it.
Once you learn this, you can never hear the word onto the same again. Like no mathematician can hear the word onto and think about it normally. Not in any healthy way. A function f that goes from a to b is onto if for each b, in set B, there is some input a in A, so that f of A equals B. In other words, i.e., we can hit every output in the codomain. We can hit everything in the codomain. We can attain every value in the codomain. Now this is kind of a bullshitty kind of thing, I gotta be honest. Because it all relies on what I said the codomain was. So here's how do I answer this? How to determine? You have to know the codomain. Find the codomain. And I'm putting that in quotes because you're given that. What's the codomain of this function, the way I wrote it? That's the codomain. I'm becoming more and more thank you. I'm becoming more and more contaminated by the minute. I did just get my COVID booster yesterday.
You did?
I got my like 7th one or something. Yeah.
Man.
So yeah, I know. My arm hurts like hell.
So many tracking chips in you now.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I get discounts on Microsoft products. So find the codomain. It's just, here it's B. And you'll be given that statement, it's always just this set right here. If the range of the function, which is the actual stuff you can output, equals the codomain, the function is onto. Cool. So let me give you an example. Now let's talk. Let's go back to yield f of x equals x squared. Now I haven't given you the codomain, so you don't know. Right now, if I asked you, is f onto? You'd have to say, I don't know. Because I don't know what you're claiming the codomain to be. But what if I said this? F maps real inputs into the real numbers. What's the codomain? Real numbers, what's the range? 0 to infinity. So check it out. The codomain is just this thing right here. The range, which we determined already, is not all of the real numbers. So this function is not onto. How could I make this function onto? Like I said, it's a game. It's a weird game, but it's a game people play.
You're asking to change the codomain, not the function?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Then the codomain would have to be just 0 to infinity.
Exactly. Just make the codomain the range, and now you've got an onto function. So, but if f goes from the reals to this little set here, that is onto. Isn't that silly? That is the way life is. So that's weird. All right. Let's get into some actual cranking out some shit. This has been all very, very theoretical and lots of definitions and stuff like that. This is kind of what your Connect is all about. this more airy part of the whole thing. The web work is about the following. So, let's say we have some function. Here's what I'm going to talk about. Here's the header. Composition of functions. So that word is composition. I apologize for my spelling. And I've got a set A, and I've got a set B, and then I've got another set C. I've got some function that goes from A to B, and I've got another function that goes from B to C. If I want to just say, hey, can we forget the middleman here and just go straight from A to C? And put this all into one rule? That's called the composition of F and G. So notice here what we do is we first take some X in this set and I spit out F of X. And there's some number in here. And then I take that output and I run it through the next function. So this is almost kind of like, you've got your mic, you've got out to a speaker, and then I've got another mic set up over here, and I'm piping the sound into that speaker, and you know that can get really bad if you've ever tried it. And then I've got another speaker. So this would be like my first function, and this would be my second function. And what I'm interested in is, what does it sound like if I say howdy into here? What does it sound like when it comes out down here? So the composite, yeah, it sounds loud, probably distorted, and just horrible for all sorts of reasons. But this, if I go directly here, that's the composition. So I take this input, I get this output, now I'm gonna run this output in through this function here. So check it out. This G is now got an input of F of X, and that's how I notate it. So this thing right here is G of F of X. Notice that this is the second function. This is the first function. And if I want to write this in a interesting way, I would say this: G little open circle F, and this means composed with. So golf, something like that. That just says first run through F, then take that output and run it through G. This is the composition of two mic speaker systems. So in practice, you're going to do this on the web work in the following way. I'm going to give you two functions, or web work is. So example, how to do the web work. Just to be quite blunt. Here's how you do the web work. It's all about composing functions. So do I even have any? I don't know. We'll see. Sure. Here's a couple. These are pretty uninteresting. I could have made these up. So let's say f of x equals 3x minus 5, and g of x equals x cubed plus 2. Okay, so now if I asked you, or web work asked you, or someone asked you, find the following: f composed with g of x. Find following. Well, what this means is that the g first eats the x, and then the f eats that output. So this is first, and then this is the second. So to do this, I want you to think about these functions in a more general way. And I think that this will help, especially if you've had trouble with this before. I always like to express these things like this. So this f is just a rule for taking some input, which I'm going to denote as a box, taking 3 times whatever that is and subtracting 5. Got it. And then here, this g takes whatever input, cubes it, and adds 2. Now why would I do that? because it makes this whole thing easier. So check this out. F says take the input. So right here it's just these symbols. And you almost have to let go and just do the symbols and let the symbols do what they want to do here. So this is going to equal, this is in the box, right, up here. So it's going to equal 3 times g of x minus 5. And then what is g of x? Now I just replace it with that formula. So that's 3 times, just use the formula, x cubed plus 2 minus 5. Look, I got parentheses. You're going to want parentheses. Parentheses are key here. Use them lots. It'll keep shit straight. Now right now, that's the answer. I might want to simplify it. So I would multiply through here. I just multiply both those times 3, just distribute. And so 3x cubed plus 1 is a prettier answer. That's the composition of those two functions. What does that mean? This is a shorthand formula. I don't know why I'm snapping at it. Wake everybody up. That is a shorthand formula for first I take a number and I run it through here, and then I take whatever that is and run it through here. Instead of doing that, just do that. So let me ask you, what is this? Can you please find? Now I'm going to ask you to find some stuff. So warm up your fingers. What is g composed with f of x? So now the f first. So that's g of f of x. Can you please write that out? And if you get it, simplify it as best you can. What is that going to be? Nick's getting out a pen. That's the right attitude. See, Joey sees me coming to tell him he needs to get out a pen. Yeah, thank you.
I know.
It sucks. What a life. What a hardship. How do we do it day after day?
It is hard.
Okay, so we are cranking out these compositions.
G of x.
I'm gonna try and find something fun for us to look at here. We're gonna have some fun in just a minute. And then I would just ask you really quick, what is this? F composed with itself. What does that look like? Simplify that one. That one's fun. Show you a slightly different way to do this. I'm going to place f of x with its formula here. So it's formula. So you can also do this if you want. Use that as your input. That's in the triangle over there. The triangle knows what to do. G just says take whatever's inside here and cube it, and then add 2. But what's in there is 3x minus 5. And I have parentheses. And there's nothing super deep going on. You just kind of got to understand this game. Is this looking okay? Can we talk about, anybody want to talk about that at all? this is a great answer. You could, like, if you're like super gung-ho, like multiply that all out, but you don't need to. This isn't that kind of class. And in computers, this is probably the more efficient thing to do anyway than multiply it all out. Like if you're looking at computational speed, this is probably much faster. This one here is f of x. So what is this like? This is like I've got my mic and I have a speaker down here. So here's my speaker. And then I take the mic and I actually put the mic next to the speaker. So the speaker sound now becomes the input. And I get some feedback. Yeah, and then this, depending on how this goes, you know, a little tweak can make it go and get really loud and just terrible. But let's do this here, and then I'll show you, I'm going to tell you a really awesome story. So this is f of 3x minus 5. And f says, so now I've got this in the box. So I'm going to take 3 times that thing minus 5. Look, I'm not really thinking here. I'm just kind of doing mindlessly almost what that thing's telling me to do. So this is actually this with parentheses. And then I simplify. And that's my final answer. 9x minus 20. Did I do that right?
Solid.
Solid. Outstanding. I'm glad I can do that. So, let me show you, let me tell you a lovely story. So Monday we're going to come in and work on stuff, right? So bring your laptops, and you know, you don't have to super bust ass over the weekend, but you might want to do some work because this is going to be due Tuesday, especially since we are dedicating our Monday to it. All right, I want to show you something amazing. Let's see if I can get output here.
He just like opens up his Minecraft world. He's like, look at this.
Look at this roller coaster.
What's that?
Loads up the Minecraft realm. Now look at this computer that I built. Nice roller coaster.
Oh yeah, I forget what it's called, but it's a computer somebody built in there, and they're running Minecraft on it.
Oh, yeah.
They're running Minecraft on Minecraft?
What?
Mineception?
Yes, yeah, it is. In some ways, it's just composition, right? Of course I'd say that.
What? That's so random.
Check this out, the old parabola. This is one of the best stories I know. So, here's the game. Take this parabola. This parabola is our, hey guys, I'm trying to tell you something. This parabola is the name of the game. So here's my input, and here's how the game runs. I go from the input to the parabola, and I always go up or down to the parabola, and then I take the horizontal to this diagonal line, so that's a perfect diagonal line. And then once I'm on the line, I go up or down to the parabola. So moving to the parabola is always up or down. Moving to the line is always left or right. Look at how it goes. So this input goes here, over to here, up, and then I gotta go across the line, so I go back to the line, and this is what it does. It starts to spiral in. So this is a feedback loop. This is literally kind of, I'm taking my output. So here, really all I'm doing is I'm taking my output and putting it back into the parabola. I don't want to get into the details of it because you don't need to understand that to understand what's about to happen. This control here, so there's 2 controls. This control moves the shape of the parabola. Yeah, exactly. So this thing, check it out. You see different behaviors for the height of the parabola. Let's go back to that one kind of there. So if I move the input, notice how the output kind of does the same thing. No matter where the input is, whoa, shit, getting a little crazy. Oh, I gotta fix this shit. We need finer resolution here. So let's see. I think that's at 0.1. 0.001. Okay, there we go. Oh, that's my. Did I just totally fuck it up? You sure did, dude. Let me just reload. Yeah. Okay, so. Let me move back. Now I change the input, and I still get that kind of same end behavior, right? No matter where I start for my input. Well, here's what we want to fix. This should just be 0. I don't know why they would make this app so terribly. And then we really just want a 1 as our upper output. Okay, there we go. Now life's going to be a lot better. There we go. So check it out. You got that step, but notice it's spiraling around that intersection of the curves, the line and the parabola. Now as I change this parabola height, I see new behaviors emerge. Like first off, wow, that one is just like going straight to the point there, right? And if I move away, can you see it spiraling a little slower? It's taking longer. It's taking more iterations to get down to that point. Watch what happens as I start to change this. So now check that out right there. Right now what's happening is a whole new behavior. For this input and this height of the parabola, I'm just kind of bouncing back and forth. So remember, what was once one input is now split into 2 inputs, or 2 outputs, excuse me. So there was one fixed point that it was going to, and then as I increase the height of the parabola, now we have 2 different states. And just think about top and bottom as the 2 states. Now watch what happens as I increase this some more. Yeah, so it's just kind of refining itself and it's blowing up. Let's move it down so you can see this. And now look, uh-oh. Now that little square is splitting. And so now there's 4 different states it kind of bounces between. Output, 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 4 states. So each of these 2 kind of split like this. If I keep moving this, and I'm going to, I guarantee you that. Each one of those splits. And now check this out. All of a sudden, I have something that doesn't look like it's settling down anywhere, does it? So here's what happened. And you can't see it because it happens so fast. But as I move that parameter that controls the height of the parabola, these start to split faster and faster. And then they split so fast that I can't even tell. These get shorter, these little bits. And then all of a sudden, this breaks into what is called chaos. So you've heard chaos, you've heard of the butterfly effect. Things like there's a stupid movie with Ashton Kutcher about it. Unless I'm just too old for that too. That's nobody knows about that anymore. And then, as I keep doing this, what I'll find is that it settles down again. And then it gets crazy again. And this picture over here expresses the equilibrium states, the states that I can achieve. Yvonne, yes?
Your iPad's about to die. Is that alright?
What's that?
Your iPad's about to die.
Oh shit. Oh shit. Could you stop it?